The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, a faint, steady buzz that drilled into the skull. The interrogation room smelled faintly of metal, coffee, and disinfectant, government issue in every sense. Riley Vance sat straight-backed in the metal chair, wrists cuffed before her on the table, the cold biting into her skin. Her uniform was crisp, though the wrinkles at her cuffs betrayed the long night behind her. Across from her stood Lieutenant Harper, jaw tight, posture perfect, his hands clasped behind his back like he thought the gesture made him taller. "Name," he demanded, his tone sharp enough to cut through the silence. "Commander Riley Vance," she said. Her voice carried no tremor, no hesitation, just a calm certainty that made him narrow his eyes. "Commander," he echoed, letting the word hang in the air like a joke. "You're aware impersonating a Navy SEAL is a federal offense?" She met his stare evenly. "I'm aware." Harper leaned over the table, close enough for her to smell the coffee on his breath. "Then maybe you can tell me why there's no record of you in the system." "No Commander Riley Vance. No SEAL. No nothing. You don't exist." She blinked slowly. "That's the point." He scoffed and straightened, pacing around her chair. "The point," he repeated, his voice rising. "You think this is a game? You were arrested on base wearing a uniform you have no right to wear, carrying forged credentials, and spouting operational jargon you probably picked up on YouTube. So, if this is a game, I'd say you're losing." Riley didn't turn to follow him. She stared straight ahead, eyes distant but alert. "You ever been deployed, Lieutenant?" His pacing stopped. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means," she said quietly, "you sound like a man who's never been far enough from a desk to understand what's buried under it." His face flushed red. "You don't get to mouth off here. You're not the one asking questions." He slammed a folder onto the table. The papers inside spilled out. Photographs, blurry surveillance stills, a confiscated sidearm, a set of dog tags. "These are your lies. We ran your prints, your DNA, nothing. Not a match to any service member, living or dead. So I'll ask again, who are you really?" Riley's eyes flicked to the dog tags. The edges were worn smooth, the letters nearly faded. For the briefest moment, something, grief, maybe, flickered across her face. Then it was gone. "I told you," she said. "Commander Riley Vance, U.S. Navy, SEAL Team 9. Harper laughed. "There is no SEAL Team 9. Her lips curved into the ghost of a smile. "Exactly." Before he could respond, the door opened. The guard outside snapped to attention. A tall man entered, Admiral's stars glinting on his collar, silver hair cut close, eyes that looked like they'd seen every war twice. The air shifted instantly. Even Harper straightened. "Admiral Dawson," he said, saluting. "Sir, we're in the middle of an interrogation." "The suspect isn't a suspect," the Admiral interrupted quietly, his gaze fixed on Riley. He studied her face with an intensity that silenced the room. Then he turned to Harper. "Remove her jacket." "Sir." Harper blinked. "You heard me, Lieutenant." Harper hesitated, then nodded to the MP, who stepped forward and unclipped the front of Riley's uniform jacket. As the fabric fell from her shoulder, the tattoo came into view. It wasn't fresh. It wasn't the kind of ink someone got to look tough at the bar. It was old, the black lines softened into the skin, etched deep, as if burned there by salt and sand and memory. The Navy SEAL trident. Anchor, eagle, trident, pistol. The mark of a warrior who had survived the impossible. Harper's breath caught. "Sir, that could be fake." The Admiral stepped closer, his eyes narrowing. "That's no fake. The shading, the placement, every team's got its tell. That one's authentic." Riley said nothing. She only watched him, waiting. "Commander Vance," Dawson said at last, his tone shifting from skepticism to something quieter, almost reverent. "I buried your file myself." Harper turned, confused. "Sir, what are you saying?" "I'm saying," the Admiral replied, still looking at her, "this woman isn't who you think she is. She's exactly who she says she is." For the first time since she'd been dragged into the room, Riley relaxed her shoulders. Her wrists still bore the cuffs, but her composure was iron. "I told them you wouldn't believe me," she murmured. Dawson gave the faintest nod. "You shouldn't even be alive." "Neither should they," she said, eyes flicking toward the folder on the table. Harper's confusion deepened, but the Admiral raised a hand to silence him. "Uncuff her," he ordered. When the steel finally clicked open, Riley rubbed her wrists and stood. Harper stared, still processing, but Dawson's expression had turned grave. "Lieutenant," he said without looking away from her, "clear the room." "But, sir." "Now." The door shut behind the young officer, and the hum of the lights filled the silence once more. The Admiral leaned against the table, studying her. I need to know why you came back. Riley met his gaze without flinching. Because it's not over. And for the first time that night, the Admiral looked afraid, not of her, but of what her words might mean. The morning sun spilled through the blinds, striping the Admiral's office in pale gold and shadow. The sea beyond the window was calm, the kind of deceptive calm that precedes a storm. Commander Riley Vance sat across from Admiral Dawson, a cup of untouched coffee cooling between her hands. The handcuffs were gone now, but the bruises they'd left on her wrists remained, a faint, reddish echo of what she'd endured to get here. Neither spoke for a long time. The Admiral's office was too neat, too quiet. On the wall hung framed medals and black and white photos of men long gone, their youth frozen in time, their courage reduced to captions. The ticking of the clock was the only sound between them. Dawson finally leaned back in his chair. You shouldn't be here, he said, not looking at her. His voice carried the weight of both relief and regret. You were declared Kia for a reason. Riley's eyes stayed on the window, where gulls wheeled over the water. You buried my file yourself. You tell me the reason. He looked at her then, really looked. The same gray eyes, the same clipped tone, she hadn't changed much since he last saw her. A little thinner maybe, a few more lines around her mouth. But the steel in her expression was familiar. It was the same look she'd had the day she volunteered for the operation. That mission wasn't supposed to exist, he said slowly. Team 9 wasn't supposed to exist. The op was off the books, buried under 5 layers of deniability. You and your people knew that. I know what I signed up for, she said. He sighed, rubbing his temples. You weren't meant to come back, Riley. Not after Kandahar. The name hung between them like a wound that hadn't healed. Riley finally looked at him. That's the thing about ghosts, she said quietly. Sometimes they come home. He frowned. Why now? Why after all this time? Her fingers tightened around the coffee cup. Because someone's moving pieces that shouldn't exist anymore. You remember Commander Ruiz? My XO. Of course. They used his credentials to open a weapons transfer channel in Turkey. A ghost account. His biometric key was burned after he died, but the signal was real. Someone replicated it. Dawson's face hardened. You're saying, someone inside the system is resurrecting the dead. I'm saying, Riley said, leaning forward, that whatever we uncovered in Kandahar, the shipment, the private contracts, the backdoor deals, it wasn't buried as deep as you thought. Someone's digging it up. He studied her for a moment, his jaw tightening. And you want to finish the job. I want justice, she said. For my team. The Admiral was silent for a long time, the weight of her words pressing down on the room. He turned to the window, watching the waves crash against the seawall. You know what reopening this means. It pulls skeletons out of every closet in the chain of command. You'll have people after you again. Riley smiled faintly. They've been after me since the day I walked out of that desert. He turned back, exhaling slowly. You think you can do this alone? I don't have a choice. You always have a choice, Commander, he said, his voice low, almost pleading. You could disappear again. I could make it official this time. New name, new life. No more ghosts. She met his gaze with quiet defiance. I'm tired of running from what happened. I'm tired of pretending the men who killed my team don't still breathe the same air. Her words hit him harder than she knew. Dawson reached into a drawer and pulled out a worn leather folder, sealed with a red tag. He hesitated before sliding it across the desk toward her. Clearance level Omega, he said. This file doesn't exist. You didn't get it from me. Riley placed her hand on the folder, her pulse steady. What's inside? Everything we buried. Names, routes, cover companies, mission logs. If you're right, the trail starts there. She nodded once, understanding what it cost him to hand it over. You're risking your career. He gave a small, humorless smile. At my age, what's left to risk? The room went quiet again. Outside, a gull screamed and dove toward the water. The Admiral stood, moving to the window. I kept your name alive in one place, he said softly. In the wall at Coronado. The memorial. Your team's names are there. Yours is too. I know, she said, rising from her chair. I went there before coming here. He turned, his expression unreadable. And what did you feel, seeing it? Anger, she admitted. But not at you. He nodded once, the silence stretching. Then, with a resigned exhale, he reached out his hand. Welcome back, Commander. Riley took it firmly, her grip steady, her eyes sharp with purpose. Let's finish this, she said. He didn't answer, but his silence was enough. She tucked the folder under her arm and walked toward the door. As it shut behind her, Dawson stared out at the sea, the sunlight catching on his metals. Somewhere deep down, he knew, whatever storm she was about to walk into, it was one the Navy wouldn't come back from unscathed. Outside, the wind carried the faint cry of gulls and the far-off rumble of waves against the pier. Riley didn't look back. She'd already spent too long among ghosts.